We're reviewing Aaron's $33 big shot win. There's a bunch of hands in here where I would play them differently. A few of them are going to be exploits from Aaron Barone here that we're going to talk in depth about. We're going to compare exploit versus GTO and talk about when to apply these kind of concepts when you're in game. So we've late reg this tournament to some degree. We're in with 20 big blinds, pretty standard. Check here, flop. Kind of gets interesting. What are your thoughts immediately here?
So I actually think you could still raise pre. When an unknown player limps the small blind, some people will trap, right?
For sure.
But most people are still raising, I would say, their B+ level hands in the spot. So if you're up against a player who's going to raise their strong hands, then when they limp, they're weak or very strong. You can get away with a lot of raising out of the big blind.
For sure.
You're also in position the rest of the way. But, you know, I choose a check, fine. And on the flop, I think I bet this a lot more than I check.
Would you rather check 5x without any backdoors? Because you've got this lovely backdoor flush draw that makes a lot of turns kind of safer. Like if it's an overcard to your 5, but it's a heart, it's not as much of a disaster. So does that factor into your checking and betting decisions?
It does. Like initially I thought I'd want to check 6-5, 7-5, 8-5 because of the backdoor straight draw. So it's kind of the same idea. The important thing that I try to think about here is, and a lot of spots really, is if I'm going to bet all of my 5s and all of my 9s, what does that mean for my checking range? And it means it's really weak.
Yeah.
So I can't do that.
Yeah.
So you got to find a way to have some hands that are strong that take all of the potential lines, right? So sometimes a 5 will check, sometimes a 5 will bet, and the same thing with a 9.
Another thing to think about is that our checking range is going to be really, really weak because we're in the big blind and we press the check button. So like our range is super wide. We do check back on this occasion. Turn is a king, which we hate to see really. Villain checks again though. What are your immediate thoughts now after they've limped pre, checked flop, checked turn?
I think I still have a choice of betting or checking because you're still going to have hands that might want to check twice.
True.
But when the villain checks twice here, to me, I think that we have the best hand a lot. I think we can still get value. If my opponent here has ace high or even queen high, I don't necessarily think they're always going to fold turn. I think we're pretty much going to get one street of value. Sure. My opponent could still also have a weak flush draw or chose to not bet 6-7, 6-8, 7-8. So if I end up checking this back, I want to bet river. If I bet here, I'm probably going to check river. Okay. But I think one of the two streets is worth a bet.
You picked this street. You went for half pot and our opponent folded. No disagreements from me. So small blind has 13 big blinds. Big blind has 35 big blinds. We raise. Big blind calls. Well, this is a fun flop. Big blind checks. So this board is extremely wet and extremely dynamic. Wet refers to the number of draws. Dynamic refers to how often the nuts changes on various turn cards. So any spade will change what the nuts is on the turn here. So will any 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, queen, king, or ace. So it's very wet and very dynamic. What's your betting frequency on this flop?
I think I c-bet a little more than theory. Like then poker theory says you should have more checks, and I know that I continuation bet more frequently. I do, however, use a small size also more frequently. The thing is, when I pick a small sizing here, and I do it with hands like, let's say I have queen 9 of hearts, I'm not planning on folding to a check raise, and I'm still willing to barrel turns and rivers. Like I'm aware that when I pick a tiny size, my opponents are going to continue with a wide range, and I'm okay with that. And depending on how the board turns out, I'll either turn my hand into a bluff, try to get value, or give up. Like all those options are still on the table, even with this hand. I think people see this hand and they think, well, you're going to bet and you're just going to big bet the turn and shove the river, right? All the time. No, because there are going to be turns and rivers that are just really bad for me.
I think I would use a big sizing, but like you, I also see bet too much, more than what GTO would be. Do you check any flush draws on this board? And which ones?
I think the 8x of spades are the ones that feel like the most natural checks because I have showdown. I actually think checking this hand some of the times really good. I'd rather check ace king of spades than ace deuce of spades. Reason being that when I have ace king of spades, I block him from having a king high flush draw, which is a hand that my opponent, if they have that, they might want to play for stacks right now. And I want that, right? If they want to get in king 5 of heart or spades, great.
Because like we look at this hand and we see all the equity, 2 overcards, nut flush draw, anxious to get lots of money in, but specifically having the king of spades, we actually block some of the hands they'll stack off with. I think that thought is a bit more important in different positions if it was like middle position against early position, because there's a lot less suited hands in those situations, whereas in this situation they have all of the spade hands in their big blind to call with. They do fold, which is a shame, because this hand could have been really interesting going down the streets, hypothetically. Ace-9 suited. We raise and face a... Is that a jam? It is a jam. Oh, and another jam. What's the worst hand you call here?
Ace-Jack suited.
Ace-Jack suited. Okay, dude.
The thing is that I'm trying to find a hand in this spot that I think does well against villain 26's range. Like, I think that's the issue. Like, I think we're crushing, well, we're doing fine enough against villain 24's unknown player's range.
Yeah.
But when a player jams in behind at this point, in a non-PKO, they're telling you that they have a hand they think is ahead of the button. And so now you're up against 2 ranges and one is much stronger than the other. But this is only 10 big blinds as well.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like I'm calling 8 big blinds, like nearly 3-1.
Yeah.
If Ace-Jack suited has, enough equity, it might have just enough in terms of chip EV, but it also depends where we're at in the tournament.
Of course.
Like on a final table, it might be really bad.
Yeah, we fold the Ace-9 suited. And we would have been in terrible shape. Kings, we open. Villain 12 calls. And we get an ace-high flop. We are in early position against the cutoff. On an ace-high board, it's already quite tricky. Checking, okie dokie. They bet half pot. Feels awkward already. I'm not folding to 1-bet either. Aaron puts in the call. No sense in raising. We're not going to bluff them off of an ace. They're not going to call with worse. They're not going to call with pocket 9s if we check raise. So just calling. Turn is another ace. You check here. Can we do anything different? Can we lead this turn?
I think if you end up leading this turn, like with this hand, you're just going to lose value. Like in position, I could actually see a reason to like maybe when they check, then you bet. Something like that if they led flop. But if my opponent has Queen Jack of Hearts and I lead this turn, like, yeah, I win the pot.
Yeah.
Because they had nothing and they were drawing dead.
Check, check. River's a 7. We check again. Opponent checks back. Pocket 9s. Didn't want to bet river?
I would bet a deuce river.
Okay.
And I would bet a lot of different rivers. But like the 7 is bad just because part of their range that we beat on the flop are flopped second pairs. 7-8 suited, 7-9 suited, 7-6 suited. And if my opponent is going to hero call the river with something that's not an ace and not a 7, it's a very like narrow range of hand. It's pocket 8s, pocket 9s, which might 3-bet pre.
Yeah.
Pocket 10s, jacks, queens, which almost always 3-bets pre. And then king high, which I block. So if I had pocket jacks here, I'm betting river. 10s, I bet river. I just think kings are not the one I want to use.